All right, we're going to jump over to the last of the Waves plugins. This is a convolution reverb. I'm going to discuss convolution reverbs in some detail. Right now I'm just going to show you the plugin itself. Bada bing, bada boom. It's not the prettiest. It's kind of old. Don't let that deceive you. It's got some really cool sounds. What a convolution reverb basically is a sample of different rooms, caverns, spaces all over the world that they've sent a sound guy to with a high quality microphone and some kind of a device that creates a noise. Like originally I think they were using starting guns, and then they started using a sweep. They would put out a pink noise tone, pipe that out into the room, and then they would record the reverb of that room with that sound, and then they could electronically, magically remove the sound itself of that starter gun or that tone, that sweep, and then they're just left with the sound of the room. That's the basic description of a convolution reverb. I think convolution or convoluted means complicated. So it was a very modern and complicated way to, again, take a snapshot or a sample of the sound of the reverb in the room. You're kind of going backwards. Usually you create a sound and then you put it into the reverb, and this is the kind of the upside down of that. You've got the reverb to begin with, and then you're putting a sound into it. It's a little bit flipped, if that makes any sense to you. But what's important is that they've gone around the world and measured lots and lots of different spaces, from caverns and caves all the way to cathedrals and synagogues, amphitheaters, coliseums. I think they've got one called Big Cave, which I think there's a couple of big caves in here. They've given you a whole bunch of different really cool convolution reverbs of different spaces around the world. They've got some of the most famous studios in the world. If you want to go into a Nashville recording studio and have a sample of what that studio sounds like, or I think they've got one of the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville. I mean, it's just a really long list of different spaces, famous concert halls. It's amazing what you can do with a convolution reverb. I like looking at all the different pictures, and they show you the positions of the microphones in the auditorium. They'll give you front row, middle row, back row, left and right. I mean, you can really dial in a sound that you want. I think they've got the stairwell from a skyscraper. It's one of my favorites. It just rings out forever. It's huge, and it just, if you're looking for a special effect, especially something like that for a deep space echo or something scary, a convolution reverb might be for you. To be honest, I don't go to them too much for like just a vocal reverb. I'm not apt to reach for a convolution reverb concert hall, and I don't know why, but I just prefer some of the other plates and chambers and algorithmic reverbs. I guess because I grew up on them. You know, I grew up on these types of things. These are not convolution reverbs. These are mostly algorithmic reverbs, which simulate rooms. And then some of the ones I mentioned earlier, some of the samples of chambers and plates from back in the vintage studios. So the convolution reverb is a little bit specialized, but it's good to have in your arsenal, good to have in your back pocket if you're looking for something special. One of the tricks about it is that when you first load it up, you're going to get some very basic settings. You only get a short list of a hall, a room, a studio, and a plate. What you want to look into is how to download. They've got a free download of sampled acoustics. I'm not going to go into how to do that right now. And then if you download, it's not hard to do, just Google it, or you can look in the instructions in the manual, which is again included right here, user manual. Take the time to read through that. Parametric convolution reverbs are what those are called. It's a pretty deep manual. I always take the time to read my manuals. That makes you an expert. They've got a light version, and the IRL is the one I've got that gives you access to the full list. It costs a little bit more. I think it's included with the Renaissance bundle that I mentioned earlier. I think the IRL, impulse response, comes with that. That's what the IR stands for. And you can download from the website very quickly. You can download the different presets, which are going to give you more than those four. Those are going to give you some sampled acoustics that you definitely want. This is where things get really cool and interesting. When you've got this list, then you just pop over here. They've got two different amphitheaters. I think both of those are in Italy, famous Italian old amphitheaters. That'll be part of my course later on, going into those. There's an arena in London, the Wembley. These are big soccer stadiums, basically. Auditoriums, ballrooms, even the interiors of different cars and buses. If you needed that for, say, a film, you wanted to sound like they were talking inside a car, there's a Ford Econoline, a Lincoln Navigator. So and they sound like you're in a car. I've checked them out. Great for film work. They've given you a bunch of cool different churches, clubs. Look at that. Birdland, Bluebird, CBGB's in New York, punk rock club. They took the time to go around to these different places and actually sample those famous places. Then it goes over, you got to kind of have to keep on selecting. It'll show you if you want it in front of the stage or Omni mics. And it's kind of tricky. You got to go back in here and choose either your impulse response and reset or impulse response. So don't let that scare you off though. If you're patient, it'll pull up the reverb you want, and you've got access to lots of different spaces around the planet. Pretty cool. Way cool. Synagogues, St. Petersburg. There's the skyscraper stairwell right there. That's one of my favorites. Small room scoring stages. That's a famous Todd A.O. scoring stage in Hollywood. There's a whole bunch of different recording studios. If your room is small like mine and you don't have a nice big studio to set the band up, you can go borrow Conway Studios. So if you want the sound of a different room than what you've got, maybe check out a Convolution Reverb. Again, I won't go into all the details of this. It's not too complicated. The most complicated part is going to be selecting from your presets. Impulse response and reset, boom. And that's the sound of the Syracuse Amphitheater in Italy. Ciao, bella. I'm hungry for tiramisu. Or maybe a lovely Chianti.